¿Qué onda? Thanks for watching Doing Life with Jenny. If you're new here, I am currently a Spanish teacher in the US, but after the school year, I'm packing up and moving to Mexico, to the state of Hidalgo. If you're also interested in moving to Mexico, stick around because I'm going to tell you all of the factors that you should consider in deciding which state or city to move to. Sorry about the very plain background. I'm in the middle of organizing stuff for the move, and someone just came to buy the furniture, so I have a hot mess. I'll try to reorganize it by the next video, but no promises, nor do I really care. One of the many things you should consider is the climate. In Mexico, there's almost a climate for everyone. If you like cold, like snow, you're not going to find that in Mexico. There are a couple areas where it snows once in a great while, but it's not like your Minnesota or your Alaska or Chicago. There are some places that are warm year-round. Those places tend to also be humid, which I am not a fan of the humidity, nor is my hair. And in central Mexico, it tends to be chilly in the evenings and mornings and nice to warm during the day. Of course, each city will vary a little bit in how chilly or how hot it does get. Nothing that a quick Google search can't tell you. Just type in the name of the city and annual climate. The next thing to consider is elevation, and for multiple reasons. Mexico is very mountainous, so if you don't adapt well to high elevation, don't live there. I did read something where short people adapt more easily than other people. I don't know if that is true, but I'm only 5'2" and I adapt quite well. But don't forget, the high elevation doesn't just affect how you feel, but it also affects your ability to burn in the sun. But if you're already prone to burning easily, I think you're just putting yourself at risk. Because if you're from Canada or the US, you're already getting closer to the equator, and then at that high elevation, the combination of the two things could just make the UV index way too strong for you. But of course, everyone should be using sunblocks and wearing a hat with a wide brim to protect like your face and your neck. One thing that many people probably do not consider is that if you plan on having a car in Mexico, if you're living in a mountainous area or a very hilly area, it is very tough on the transmission of your car. The next thing to consider is food accessibility. Of course, they have food all over Mexico. It's very accessible. But what I mean is if you are a very adventurous eater and you like to have Thai food and Chinese food and Indian food, that can be limited in certain areas of Mexico. So do your research. Also, if you have some kind of food allergies, intolerances, or celiac, you'll want to do your research to make sure those types of foods that can accommodate you are available in the city that you decide to live in. If you plan on doing any traveling, either within Mexico, coming back to your home country, traveling to other countries, you may want to consider the proximity to the airport. This was something that I was originally looking into, but then I was being more realistic, like once I'm in Mexico, how much traveling am I going to do via airplane? Not much, because I'm going to be on a tight budget. I don't plan on coming back to the US unless I have to. And within Mexico, I tend to travel by bus. If you fly regularly and you have more than like an hour commute to the airport, then probably that's gonna become tedious. Next, consider the walkability of your city or town, especially if you don't plan on having a car. Every city center, whether it's a big city or a small town, is very walkable. So what I'm referring to is your specific neighborhood. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Mexico has started adapting like some of the city planning models that the US and probably Canada has as well, where they create these suburbs where all it is houses. It's just like a subdivision, and you don't have all of the stores and amenities that your more traditional areas of Mexico have. So just look closely into the neighborhood. Of course, if that's what you want and you have a car, that's good for you. But I personally enjoy the freedom of not having a car in Mexico or not having that expense. And I looked for something that I can walk to the bus station, the grocery store, and the market. Perhaps the biggest factor you're going to consider is the cost of living, but maybe not, because Mexico already has a very low cost of living compared to the US and Canada, but for those of us that are on a budget, you will want to look into that. I didn't find a lot of good information online because a lot of the information that is out there is for places that already have a high concentration of immigrants from the US and Canada, so they've already driven up the prices. And just in a lot of those major cities, the cost of living is already higher even before us gringos arrived. But I will leave the name of this one website I found. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, then you'll find a list of the cities. But it didn't seem very accurate. The prices seemed very high on that website compared to what I'm seeing on like Facebook Marketplace. And the website is in Spanish. I just find that if you're depending on English, the price is already going to be higher than what it should be. Next, consider if your state or your specific area within the state is at risk of malaria. If you're looking into Chiapas, the southern part of Chihuahua, very rarely in Campeche, Durango, Nayarit, Quintana Roo, Sinaloa, Sonora, or Tabasco, you may encounter malaria. If you're like me, and every time you even mention the name Mexico, you're like, oh, that's so dangerous, why would you go there? Safety is your next concern. So you can visit semaforo.com.mx, and then in the top right, you can choose your state, and then several cities within that state will pop up. And various cities will pop up with a traffic light rating system that will tell you how safe or dangerous the city is in different areas such as rape, homicide, and whatnot. The next thing you may want to consider is the proximity to other major cities. That's one reason why I chose the area of Pachuca, because I can easily access Mexico City, Puebla, Querétaro, and other cities as well. Something else you may want to consider is your city's proximity. They're so freaking loud. I can't wait to get out of here. Something else you may want to consider is if there is a US embassy nearby. Hopefully you don't need to go there often, but in an emergency, it doesn't hurt. And then whenever you need to renew your passport, it's just more convenient. Next, consider what activities or amenities are available. What you're looking for is going to vary greatly compared to what others might look for, but I know I've mentioned before that I love to dance. There's really not much dancing where I am unless there's some kind of festival. But like I mentioned, my city is close to other major cities, so it's no big deal if there's some kind of dance event to pop over for the day or for the weekend. Maybe your thing is golf, so are there golf courses? Maybe you like rock climbing, is that available? Or maybe you just generally like going out your door and seeing a lot of variety of museums or cultural activities. Maybe your thing is to go to concerts. Is there a large concert venue? If you're from the US and you plan on coming back to the US frequently, especially if you're driving, you'll want to consider the proximity to the border. But of course, as foreigners, we cannot purchase land within so many kilometers of the border. I'll put the exact amount on the screen without jumping through extra hoops. It is possible, but there's an extra step you have to take. So just something else to consider. I would say it's more dangerous along the border, generally speaking. But if you have to drive back and forth regularly because of an elderly family member, or you need to come renew your license plate or whatnot, I don't know what scenarios there might be, but it is something to consider because Mexico is a large country, especially since it's very kind of long and narrow. It can take quite a bit of time to drive. Next, consider if you're going to be able to get by with no English or if you're going to need to rely on English. And just putting my 2 cents in, I know I've talked about this before, if you have no intention in learning Spanish, please don't even go. It's making the rest of us look bad, it's driving up the cost of things because people take advantage of you because you're not blending in with the locals. They feel like you don't know anything about the country. It's just my pet peeve because people complain about people coming to the US without learning English, even though the US technically does not have an official language. But you're choosing to move to Mexico, they didn't invite you to come. It's just the respectful thing to do. You shouldn't expect them to learn English because you chose to live there. There are places where you can get by with English, but that's why I'm living in a place where I'm the only foreigner because I don't want to be your stereotypical gringa. No offense. The next thing to consider is especially important if you have some kind of chronic illness or if you're already in your retirement years. You want to be close to hospitals or other types of medical facilities. And it doesn't hurt to consider that anyways, because you never know when something is going to pop up and eventually you're gonna get old too. Then lastly, don't forget about natural disasters. Mexico does have 18 active volcanoes, so please look those up and see if they're near where you would consider living. I would say especially if you have some kind of like lung issue, asthma, that can really trigger you. There are several places in Mexico that are prone to earthquakes. I'll put a map on the screen. The red is like, yes, you're going to have earthquakes regularly. The yellow is yes, once in a while. And the green is like, good to go. Notice I chose a state in the green. Is this not something I deal with here in the St. Louis area? Although we do have a fault, we just don't get earthquakes. Knock on wood. No, that was the chair. Sorry, Doug. I have a foster boy. This is Doug. I hope the camera is low enough where you can see him. He's my foster boy. Hi, baby. Okay. There can be tsunamis on the Pacific coast, and there are areas prone to hurricanes as well. Notice again, I'm in the center of the country where I don't have to worry about any of this. No hurricanes, no tsunamis, no earthquakes, no tornadoes like here in the Midwest. All I have to worry about are those scorpions, which I am terrified of. Speaking of scorpions, maybe it's wise of you to see if they're like venomous snakes in your area. Because I know in the US, like the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, they're known for their rattlesnakes. So I'm assuming that continues into the northern part of Mexico too. But I'm no herpetologist, but I would be terrified. So do your research, you don't want any visitors. But if you can think of something else that I forgot to include in this video, please put it in the comment section. We're here to support each other, learn from each other, and just share our experiences. If you would like to continue following me in my journey in moving from the US to Mexico, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Adios!